Welcome to our deep dive today. We're exploring active listening, something you use every single day. You might be thinking, a heart health charity. What's that got to do with listening? That's what intrigued me about this article. It's from the British Heart Foundation. Get this, they link how well we listen. And believe it or not, our heart health.
It might seem like a stretch at first, but think about it. When we feel heard, it reduces stress, right? And the British Heart Foundation is all about reducing stress for a healthier heart.
Okay, that makes sense. So where do we even begin with getting better at active listening? The article emphasizes that it's so much more than just sitting there where someone talks.
Absolutely. Think of it as a full body experience. We're talking facial expressions, tone of voice, posture, all those subtle cues that can speak volumes.
Right. It's like when you're talking to someone and they're fidgeting, looking at their watch. It makes you feel like you're not being heard. The article points out that this lack of attention can trigger stress responses in the speaker.
Exactly. And chronic stress, as the British Heart Foundation points out, is a major risk factor for heart disease. So suddenly, those small communication mishaps have a much bigger impact.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. So how do we avoid sending those I'm not listening signals? What does the article suggest?
Well, for starters, maintaining good eye contact. But there's a nuance. They suggest the 5-second rule. Make eye contact for about 5 seconds, break it briefly, then re-engage. It shows you're present without being intimidating.
That's so interesting because I felt uncomfortable when someone's just staring intensely the whole time. So it's like finding that sweet spot. But what about body language?
The article doesn't give specifics, but nonverbal communication experts talk about mirroring, subtly reflecting the speaker's posture or gestures can build rapport and consciously.
It's like you're on the same wavelength, even physically.
Okay.
That's fascinating. What else can we do to be better active listeners?
One of the biggest points the article stresses is avoiding interruptions. We all know that feeling. When someone cuts us off mid-sentence.
Ugh, it's the worst.
Yes.
It makes you feel like what you're saying isn't important. And from what we were just talking about, it probably spikes your stress levels too.
Precisely. And the British Heart Foundation would likely point out that repeated interruptions, even in a work setting, can contribute to a stressful environment, which isn't good for anyone's heart health.
Okay, so no interrupting. Got it. But what if the conversation starts to go off topic? The article mentions something about that, right?
Yes. They advise letting the speaker finish, even if there are pauses, and then gently guiding the conversation back on track. It's about respecting their flow of thought.
It's like saying, hey, I'm here with you, but let's try to stay focused. Makes sense. So we've got eye contact, body language, no interrupting. What's next on the active listening checklist?
Well, this is where it gets a little trickier. Listening without judgment.
Listening without judgment, I'll admit. This is the one I struggle with. It's hard to turn off those little voices in your head.
It's definitely a skill. That takes practice. The article doesn't have specific techniques. But from a psychological perspective, it's about recognizing our own biases.
Biases? Like what?
Well, we all have these mental shortcuts called cognitive biases that influence how we process information. For example, confirmation bias is the tendency to favor information that already aligns with our beliefs.
Ah, so we're more likely to hear what we want to hear rather than what's actually being said.
No wonder it's so hard to listen without judgment.
Exactly. It's like our brains are filtering information through our own lens, and the British Heart Foundation might say this can lead to misunderstandings, disagreements, and ultimately increased stress, all things that can impact our well-being.
Okay, so how do we combat these biases? Because I really want to get better at this whole listening without judgment thing.
One simple but powerful technique the article mentions is to mentally repeat the speaker's words to yourself. It helps you stay focused and ensures you're absorbing what they're saying rather than getting lost in your own thoughts. It's like forcing your brain to hit pause on its own commentary track. That's a great tip. So we've covered a lot. The importance of nonverbal cues, avoiding interruptions, and listening without judgment. It feels like we're building a toolbox for better communication.
And here's another tool, active engagement. It's not enough to just receive information. You need to show the speaker you're present and listening.
Right, because even if you're mentally repeating their words, if you're slouched and looking at your phone, it's not going to feel very engaging for them. What are some ways to show active engagement?
The article highlights some simple but effective cues, nodding, making small affirmations like yes or uh-huh. These gestures go a long way in signaling that you're following along.
It's like sending those encouraging nods that say, I hear you, I'm going.
Precisely. And on the flip side, negative cues like fidgeting, looking at your watch, or scrolling through your phone can shut down communication.
Ouch, yeah. It's like the universal sign for, I'm bored, hurry up. So we're sending positive cues. We're mentally repeating their words. What else can we do to take our active listening to the next level?
The article emphasizes two key techniques: asking clarifying questions and paraphrasing.
I love that. It's like taking what they're saying
Yeah,
and reflecting it back, making sure you're both on the same page.
exactly. And it shows the speaker that you're not just passively listening, but actively trying to understand their perspective.
Okay, so what's the best way to ask clarifying questions?
The article suggests using open-ended questions that encourage the speaker to elaborate. Instead of asking, did that make you upset? Try something like, how did that make you feel?
I see the difference. The first question is just seeking a yes or no,
Yeah.
but the second one invites them to open up.
Precisely. And when it comes to paraphrasing, the article offers a helpful starting point. Sounds like you're saying.
Mm.
It's simple, but it's a way to confirm your understanding and
Mm.
give the speaker an opportunity to clarify.
It's like saying, here's what I'm hearing. Am I getting it right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can prevent misunderstandings, you know? What's really striking me is that the British Heart Foundation, a heart health organization, is giving us all these communication tips.
It's a powerful reminder that our communication habits are linked to our well-being,
Yeah.
including our heart health.
It's like they're saying, taking care of your heart isn't just about diet and exercise. It's about nurturing relationships through mindful communication. That's pretty profound. It really makes you think
Yeah.
about the ripple effects of our words and actions.
Absolutely. The way we communicate can create a positive environment or a stressful and damaging one. And the British Heart Foundation is saying that active listening can impact our heart health and well-being.
So what can we do to put all these tips into practice? It feels a bit overwhelming.
The article suggests an exercise. Try spending a week summarizing the main points of each conversation you have. It's a good way to train your brain to pay attention and process what you're hearing.
I love that. It's like taking notes for your conversations, and it helps you remember the details.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. It's like building a muscle. The more you flex those active listening muscles, the stronger they become.
You know, we think of active listening as something we do for others, but it benefits us too.
That's a great point. When we truly listen, we gain a deeper understanding, we build connections, and we reduce misunderstandings and conflict.
Plus, we're opening ourselves up
Mhm.
to new ideas. And if the British Heart Foundation is right, all that understanding is good for our hearts.
Precisely. It's a win-win.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into active listening, inspired by the British Heart Foundation, I have a question for you. If everyone practiced active listening, how do you think it would change things? Our relationships, our workplaces, even society as a whole?
It's a fascinating question. If we were all more intentional
Mm.
about truly hearing each other, about understanding, imagine the empathy and compassion.
It's a powerful vision and one worth striving for. So we encourage you to take these tips to heart, literally and figuratively. Experiment with them, observe the difference, and see if you can spark a ripple effect of mindful communication in your own world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy listening.